IDA is indeed a private entity, which means that David Hooks and the board members of the IDA answer to no one in Etowah County. They are their own company. They can do whatever they want, and there isn't a thing we can do about it. So we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more coming up in the next 30 minutes, an hour, as we give a recap. So I just want a little teaser out there for you watching it later. Fast forward, we're going to give it a couple minutes and let folks jump on. But it's progress. It's sad that we've come to the courtroom to have to resolve this situation. But I guess it is what it is.
Well, and I'm grateful that we have a system that the court can get involved and we can ask for their assistance when there's such a gigantic dispute in what legally appropriate behavior is. So I'm grateful for having a forum in which to do that. Unfortunate that it had to get to this point that that a judge has to force these issues, but it's local, and I always said this problem is going to get solved locally by us. That we can't look to the state or federal or anybody else in order to do that, because it's our neighbors and it's our friends and it's people we have to see every day. So locally is where we need to resolve this and look to our local leaders.
All right. Reba, you're saying you can't hear her. Can you hear her now?
Can you hear me now, Reba?
We're going to shoot a Verizon commercial.
I know.
I can crank her up a little bit more.
I don't want to yell. I've been talking a lot this week, Reba. I can't believe I still have a voice. I'm getting tired of hearing myself
and a huge shout out to Reba. Reba was giving us a play-by-play sitting in the courtroom, and we really appreciate that and all the other tremendous efforts she's putting in there. So, all right, everybody's saying they can hear you fine.
Wonderful, great.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, let's see. Oh, we got 68 of you jumping in. Thank you so much. So I will say, hit that share button. And maybe tag a friend that might be interested in this. So the short version is we had court.
That is the short version.
And,
we had court Wednesday.
And so there's some stuff moving along. I know we've put out some text posts about we're getting documents in and all that kind of stuff. So guys, certainly drop your questions in there. I think this is probably because there is so much. You can see the stack of papers in front of her. There's probably going to be a lot of Christie just talking and telling us stuff.
You are going to get tired of me, I'm telling you. It's been a busy week.
So we're going to try and do that. We'll hit some high points. I do want to go ahead and say, guys, there's still a lot to unpack from all this week. And then don't forget, and we'll get to this too, but Josh and Christie and Phil have got to get ready for Monday as well. So we probably aren't going to hit everything. I've been telling her, go through, pick the high points that we really need to be aware of right now. And let's focus on those because, guys, there's a ton. There are a lot of different avenues, a lot of different intricacies. I'm glad I'm not a lawyer. That's all I'm going to say. So,
come on. It's great.
But I am stoked to see how happy the lawyers have been and how much they've enjoyed this, because if you enjoy it, then you're going to put the work in, and they certainly have. So, all right. So let's start with so you went to court. And what is the case, the general topic of what you went to court for?
So, we had asked for the preliminary injunction. We have a hearing scheduled on Monday in order to ask the court to enter that. In between when the court set it for a hearing and the hearing scheduled for the 24th, all the subpoenaed parties, just about, well, not just about, all of the subpoenaed parties filed motions to quash the subpoenas. We issued 16 subpoenas. I put a list on the Facebook page on who those were, and every party had filed motions to quash. There were 11 motions pending, a total of 26 filings that had happened between the motions in order to quash to oppose appearing in court, and the responses we filed and everything. So there was a lot to unpack. The judge set it for a hearing on Monday at 3. We had a 3-hour hearing on Monday, and the attorneys, Phil and Josh and I on one side, and then we had the attorneys for Pilgrim's Pride, the airport authority. No, excuse me, the airport authority attorney wasn't there. The IDA attorney, the Pilgrim's Pride attorneys, there were 3 of them, 2 City of Gadsden attorneys, and a water board attorney. So that was the stage that was set in order to argue those motions.
So it may seem like the airport authority board lawyer was there because one of the lawyers that was there is on the airport authority board.
Right. Jonathan Welch is on the airport authority board and is kind of the spokesperson for the airport authority. If you watch the airport authority meetings and the statements that they have made about this rendering plant, the official statements, Jonathan Welch has been the one who's made those.
But he was there representing
the IDA. That's right. He didn't officially come in his capacity as representing the airport authority. So those were the motions that were, and so one of the primary arguments that they made was, Judge, there's no need for a preliminary injunction or this hearing on Monday, quash all of these subpoenas to appear, because we've got a hearing on July the 23rd, a final hearing. The judge has set it for a final hearing on July the 23rd, and we're not planning on this is what Pilgrim's Pride lawyer said, we're not planning on starting construction until probably November anyway, so there's really no need to enter the preliminary injunction, because by the time the final hearing will happen before we start construction anyway, which, you're sitting there going, did they just say that out loud? Did they really just say, no big deal, it's probably going to be November before we start to break ground anyway, so we have to have time. So be that as it...
That's a big deal, guys.
That's a big deal. And they kept saying, well, don't worry, we don't own the land. We don't own why are you so worried? And, remember now, when we first started this case, the attorneys for the city and the IDA, their arguments were, this is just a hypothetical, Christie. This is, Judge, what are you all, simmer down? Like, this is just,
let the process happen.
Let the process work. It's just hypothetical. We go from one hearing April 6th to a hypothetical, dismiss the whole case, to don't worry, there's only construction in 6 months. We've got time for the final hearing before you do anything. Okay, great. So the idea that that's your argument, that's supposed to somehow be appealing to your case, but that was the argument.
So I'm gonna throw this out there as we talk about this, and guys, I want y'all to think about this as I've been digesting all the feedback and all the stuff that's going on. We're fighting 2 battles, in my opinion, right now, right? So we've got a legal battle, and it's not just us, but it's folks at City Hall. It's Lee Roberts, it's Mayor Gotten, Frankie Davis, David Hooks, Ben Reed, Chad Hare, and a few others, but that seems to be a lot of the names on a lot of the paperwork. It's 2 battles right now because they are politicians, because they do work for us. You've got the legal battle that's going on, but the more it seems that they fight the legal battle, the worse and worse it looks. Case in point, this whole, it's all preliminary and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, hey, well, now we know definitively they're planning on building.
Well,
they didn't. I mean, the lawyers from Pilgrim's Pride didn't just make that up.
And they took the lead. I mean, in my perception at the hearing is that the Pilgrim's Pride lawyers were taking the lead for all of the attorneys arguing. Now, I mean, they may not agree with that assessment. The attorneys may say that's not what their intention was, but it certainly seemed like Pilgrim's Pride was trying to come in there and say, hey, let us assure you that we won't start construction until November at the earliest, so let's all simmer down. And everybody just sort of seemed to buy into that, and I'm kind of looking around going, did he just say what I think he just said? Is that where we are here, that we go from nothing to see here hypothetical to, I think Lee Roberts talked about, the city attorney talked about golden shovels breaking ground, that, he's sure that before that could happen, we would intervene and file a complaint to just to dismiss it, just to not do anything, Judge, because I'm sure that, Christie will file a complaint before the golden shovels turn to break ground. I mean, these are the conversations that we're having in court here. And so,
unbelievable.
Yeah. And so that's a real concern, that's the conversation. And I think that point was not lost in court.
So let me, I got a comment in here from Ashley Langdale. So basically they admitted they're coming, but it'll be a bit.
They admitted they don't plan on starting construction, but they kept saying, there was a big play on words. We don't worry because we don't own the land. We don't own it. There's no go to the courthouse and check the deed records. There's no deed. But then when the argument was made, well, if you're not going to start anything and you don't own it and you don't intend to do it, then let the injunction just enter. Then you must not have anything to worry about that. Then if you truly are going to take no action towards moving ahead, then you must not worry about that. No, we don't agree. We don't own it. And then the city attorney started talking about, arguing, well, that doesn't mean we couldn't lease it.
Right.
Because if we don't want to lease it, because the ad valorem tax wouldn't get paid to the schools, but we could lease it, but we don't want to do that. And
so that could be taken two ways, as a dumb threat to the taxpayers that, well, if you keep fighting this, then we're just going to lease and I'm putting words. This is my interpretation. Hey, we'll just lease it, and then you're going to lose out on taxes to the schools. I mean, well,
I think that was the argument. The argument was like, well, we could avoid the whole zoning issue completely and not sell it and do a lease. That was the argument to the court, that there was somehow a way that they could get around the whole rezoning question that was before the court by just leasing it, which we don't agree that that's a way they can get around it.
Right.
And so, but they don't want to do that, but they could just lease it, which made the whole zoning issue moot anyway. And so that kind of was telling about their play on words.
Right.
We don't own it. Well, there's other ways you can have possession, and you can own something and not own it. And so so it was clear that, we're not stupid. I mean, we understand your play on word. I mean, you're not going to get in there and go, oh, well, we promise not to own it. We figured that out. We already knew that was one option that they were looking at. So
let's unpack that a bit. I don't want to deviate you from your notes and your train of thought. But so let's talk about ownership. And so, guys, this is always, everything's not going to go 100% the exact way that we want to, but there's still a lot of benefit in what has occurred. There have been documents turned over, not everything, and that was still a struggle and a fight.
It's an ongoing one.
Right.
We've got some, but a lot have been filed in camera, and the judge is reviewing them. Some haven't even been provided at all yet. The judge is working. There's orders in place, so that's just going to get there. That's going to be a fight for months. Getting these records is going to be a continual fight, but we do have some.
So one of the things that I like is now we're getting out of the world of speculation. As we do get documents in, we are starting to actually piece together what has happened, what's transpired, definitively who has done what. So let's talk about the ownership and the FAA and that relationship. And so what have we learned in the last 7-10 days?
So the city has turned some documents over relating to them approaching the FAA about releasing and transferring the Pilgrim's Pride property.
When you say them, you mean the city, not the Gadsden Airport Authority.
That's right. I have no records yet, not to say they don't exist, that the Airport Authority has been in communications with the FAA about the Airport Authority land. It's been the city, and the documents I have, it's been the city attorney who's been in communications with the FAA about some legal hurdles in order to transfer that land to Pilgrim's Pride. And there was also an additional 1 acre that they were trying to transfer to another owner too. There were some hangups with the FAA with the way the legal title had been transferred initially to the airport authority, and they were running into some obstacles. And so, and I do have a letter where the city attorney wrote to Congressman Adderholt saying, Robert,
Right.
the city of Gadsden, in conjunction with the Northeast Alabama Regional Airport, desires to sell approximately 85 acres to Pilgrim's Pride for it to locate a facility which will employ approximately 97 individuals. However, the FAA denied the airport's request for written consent and approval to sell a 1 acre tract to an existing industry because of non-compliance issues. My understanding is that these non-compliance issues arise from the city's transfer to the authority in 2004. And it goes on to ask to be able to just, Congressman Adderholt's assistance, to let the airport authority just deed back to the city all of this land. And this was a November 20th letter. And from what I understand, there was some amount of, I think this is when it all broke.
Right.
Everybody kind of found out. And from what I can see from the record, there was some urgency at first about, okay, let's hurry up and get this done. But then it ended up kind of realizing that with all of the uproar, it was not going to happen quickly.
So, and what I'm planning on doing, we're going to go through, I mean, Christie's preparing her own timeline to make sure she's got it all clear to present to the judge and all that kind of stuff. But we're definitely going to really unpack the timeline as we get all the facts in and put something together so everybody can see. But that's a big deal, because at that time they're still claiming preliminary discussions.
That's right.
And they can argue the legalities, and they want to play with words. But that, to me, you're writing a letter of urgency, and that specifically says we want to sell this land to, and then you've got the airport authority who has maintained that they have not been approached formally. Well, the reason they haven't been approached, guys, because the city was trying to do all of it. They were changing the structure to allow them to be able to handle that kind of stuff.
That's true, but
we don't know what else might be involved from the airport authority.
Give that implication the airport authority didn't know. The records seem to show that these non-compliance issues were addressed to the airport authority, and that there was a response the airport authority did give back to the FAA. And the initial, some of the letters were between the airport authority chairman and the FAA, Harry, but then Chad Hare, on behalf of the airport authority, wrote a letter to the FAA too. So remember, Chad is the general manager of the water board. So so you've got this sort of, again, this intermingling of the water board, the city, the airport authority. And in this letter from the city attorney, it says, in asking for Robert for his help, unfortunately, we do not have enough time to pursue any of the requested correction action plans before securing the deal with Pilgrim's Pride. So, I mean, it's some urgency. They're trying. This is November 20th. This is when it all hit. This was the week that it all hit. And so apparently there was, whether it was because it had just hit or some other urgency, I don't know. But we're getting trickling in, know, and we're learning about these non-compliance issues with the FAA, and that the rendering plant was part of these discussions with the FAA to try to, how much the FAA knew, but that it was this 1 acre and this Pilgrim's Pride that kind of originated this whole FAA conversation about, hey, we need to release some land. How do we do that? So we're trying to piece all that together.
That doesn't sound like they were talking hypotheticals. Not in November. So that I think, I mean, is there anything more to cover with where they're at with the transfer? So yeah, we're playing games like I was saying. This is okay. So you want to play games and win in the legal battle? We're not dumb. Hey, if you want to try and pursue the lease options, I mean, guys, we're mincing words here. Oh, well, it's still a preliminary discussion. We're just hypothetically talking about it. I mean, I've never done a development like this but that sure just doesn't sound like something like a hypothetical preliminary discussion to be having. And I mean, maybe this is just part of the education for me. Maybe jobs are actually, maybe something like this should be 99% done before the public ever knows anything about it.
Well, that was the argument that was made. That it would somehow impair economic development statewide if sort of this overall. They continue to argue all economic incentive information is confidential. Period. That's what the argument is, and that's. I would submit that's not what the law is. Not only because that's not what the law is, but because this is America. I mean,
right.
you don't just say you'll know about it after we vote on it and it's over and done with. That's just not how
you're gonna love it. It's gonna be great. You're gonna love it.
Trust us. I mean, and not that most of the time it's not fine. But these mechanisms are put in place for the rendering, for the times it's not, and they're important because of this. And this is what happens when you ignore those. So, if you agree with what their assumption, then the public would never know, right, because it's economic incentives, and they can just slide that in, and you have no right to know. And that's just not how things work.
Well, with all that, are you good to roll into talking about the decision that the judge that we found out today about the IDA? And
so we do our Judge Day he's just so meticulous and so amazing. Whether you with his orders, whether you win or you lose, he puts so much energy and time and thought into it. So he's got a very long order here, but the gist of it is he has denied all of the motions to quash. So everybody's got to come to court Monday. As hard as they fought, they do not want to come to court Monday, guys. I mean, they do not want to come, but they have to come. The records they have to produce those, some in camera for the judge to review to see if any confidential information that would fall under some type of an exemption, which the judge, his orders don't imply that he interprets the exemption the way that they do. The hearing is on, and so and he intends to hear the evidence on the preliminary injunction. And on the argument about the IDA, now the reason that this came is really the open records case, this other case we have where the issue first arose is the IDA a public entity subject to the open records laws to begin with? That was the argument that they first made. But it applies to this case because we issued a subpoena. Okay, and so the question is, IDA, do you have to supply the records because you're a public entity and the open records laws requires it? Or do you have to supply the documents because you were subpoenaed to provide them? So the judge said you have to provide them because you were subpoenaed, but you're not a public entity pursuant to the way that the law reads. And so the way they set this up, it is not within the way IDAs are formed. There's a statutory code section in the Alabama Code to set up an IDA. And if they had set it up under that code section, it's designed to be a quasi-governmental entity, and all these Open Records Acts apply. So if they'd set it, but they didn't. For whatever reason, they didn't set it up. And a standalone nonprofit is how this thing is done. And so there just wasn't enough there, in his opinion, to get there that there was in his opinion the case law just didn't get him there. But the net results, the records we asked for, we get them anyway. There were two ways we could get the records, and he said you can't get them this way, but you can get them this way. So we got the records, but the problem is this city and county is left with an IDA that it is not a public entity, and that public records, it can't be, they can do these things hidden. And I think this is something that this city, its leaders need to deal with.
Right.
It's a problem.
So what on that? If if the citizens decide that David Hooks is not leading us, is not producing the economic development and the industrial development that we want,
nothing they can do.
Nothing they can do.
There's nothing they can do.
How about the board members on the IDA? We can't affect them.
I mean the board members hire. They are technically the person who hires and fires who hooks. I mean that's who that is.
But they appoint each other.
They appoint. It's a self-perpetuating board where a number of them roll off every 3 years, and then they appoint. The board appoints who those seats are filled by after those people leave.
So, so this IDA that is solely funded by,
and they may not even know that. I mean, I don't know how engaged this IDA board even is. I know that whether it's truly functioning the way we don't know. It's not public. Its meetings are now closed. Its minutes are closed. I don't know how involved they are.
And all of the funding. I mean, at least we know that a bunch of city funding goes. It's basically a contract.
About $400,000 or $500,000 a year. From what the city budgets show, that's the only reason I know that, not from the IDA records, but the city budget shows $375, $400 and something going to the IDA every year. So
we can't get access to any of the other IDA, any of their budget information.
Nope.
So somebody could be paying them somewhere else.
We have no idea. We don't have any way to know. Now, the IDA used to not operate that way. I've talked about that before. Right. When Mike McCain was there, he treated it like it was. I'm not saying that the people intentionally said it.
Right.
It wasn't operating. It's how they're operating now. And so, he's able to take advantage of a structure that allows that to go on.
Well, so yeah, as you mentioned, that sure seems like something that our leaders and those that we elect.
If you don't like it, we gotta.
Yeah.
We gotta
you
form
can't.
a new IDA. The fix is to form an IDA under the statutory code section.
Right.
That is a governmental entity, and then that would be the IDA for the county.
And have elected officials that say, well, we're not paying that contract anymore. Basically, we're not going to pay that IDA group anymore.
That's right.
And that in essence cuts it off.
In theory, the existing IDA could restructure their articles and bylaws and comply with all of that if that's what they chose to do. So you don't have to necessarily make the current one go away. You could restructure it if they were willing to do that. There's lots of ways to get it fixed, but in its current state, there's nothing we can do to understand the inner workings of the IDA right now.
So Reba asked, I thought the city funds the IDA, so hopefully we answered that. And hopefully that makes sense. And that's part of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't know where that money, how that money is spent, where it goes.
All right. So what's next? What else happened?
Monday. The preliminary injunction hearing is on Monday. It is going ahead, which is good. So, we're asking the court to, tell the, city and the airport authority, you can take no action. Not just not own it, just no action to move this rendering plant forward in any way until this zoning issue can be dealt with. Whether they claim it's a lease, we take the position that there are types of zoning that do apply to a lease to, and we need the opportunity in order to argue that. And so just until we can get to a final hearing, stop, because they made clear they don't, unless the court tells them to stop, they're
and that
breaking
tracks
ground in November.
That tracks with all the construction bids that we've seen.
If you'll remember, the April 12th construction bid that started this whole request for a hearing said third quarter 2021 is when they would start construction. So it mirrors it.
All right. So we got some questions in here. What happens if they don't show?
They will be held in contempt, and that would not be a pleasant experience for them. I mean, it's up to the judge, but typically that's what happened. The judges ordered them to be there. They would not attend at their own risk.
All right. Well, man, we got 130 folks hanging out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, guys, if y'all have questions, I think we've hit a couple of the key points that I wanted to make sure, and I know you had a lot more. And if you guys want to hang out, I mean, we'll keep going.
A
and
page and a half more.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
So what else happened?
Well, I think that and we'll update everybody next week as with at this hearing and what happens with all of that. But I just again the the fact that we've got these word games continue. I mean, the jig is up, guys. Like, we know what you're trying to do. I don't know why there's sort of this continual effort to sort of play these games and to we just it's and I to the extent that they continue to do that. This group gets it. They're not fooling anyone. It's just in the court of public opinion. It's just making it worse, and this sort of hide the ball with everything. And everyone knows all of that. But and then to sit in court and talk about, well, I'm sure if we show up at the site in hard hats with golden shovels to turn ground, that they'll file something with the court. That, like, the idea that that's a remedy that's adequate and that we should somehow be comfortable with that, that's the mentality that we're dealing with. And we shouldn't, we all agree we shouldn't have that mentality. At this point, we should be beyond.
Right.
We're not. We're still dealing with this attempt to kind of play the same game.
Don't worry about it until there's something to worry about, right?
Yeah, and so if you think we're beyond that, y'all are beyond it. There's no doubt. But we're still having to wrestle with that and see that and help them understand that's first, it wasn't going to work to start with, and it's just not going to start. And it's just really kind of fascinating. We've watched, and as the city has spoken on behalf of the airport authority, and we keep wondering, but these documents show that was even more pervasive than the city. One record I have is from the engineer, and the engineer is contacting the Pilgrim's Pride guy about how to get out onto the land in order to do some work, and he's talking about the Pilgrim's Pride guy responds that he'll get with the city and get an opportunity for them to run some road or something on. And I'm like, what do we get with the city? I mean, the city just continuously in these is speaking on behalf of the airport authority, and the airport authority. It appears members of the airport authority know that.
Right.
They may not have been approached. The Pilgrim's Pride approached the city. The city approached the airport authority. And so the play on words from the airport authority that Pilgrim's Pride has not approached them, it's just, it's
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I mean, they approached the city who then approached them. And so I don't know how many members of the airport authority knew or didn't know. I know a few of them who did. But I don't understand why they continue to allow that.
And I want to point out, it's bad either way to me, because if all the emails and all of the paperwork, the letter, if all that is going on and not a single person on the airport authority board knows about it, then what's the point of the airport authority board? Or what's the competence level of them actually running the airport? I mean, it's bad either way.
Yeah.
If you want to play these games, it's a lose-lose situation to us that are watching this going, what? Are you kidding me? I don't care about the legalities.
Mm-hmm.
I care about people, just having some integrity and not trying to pull one over or think that I'm a complete moron, which that's kind of the way I'm feeling like they want to treat us. So,
well, and I don't know if it was at one point members of the airport authority who are involved telling other members of the airport authority things that they then believed and would repeat. And, that happens at times. Yep. But that ship has sailed. There is so much data and information that the idea of being able to rely, if you're relying on being told oh, we haven't been approached, don't worry about it. You can't do that. There's too much out there to be able to claim that you don't know about it. And the idea that this community shouldn't hold them responsible for that, I think it is something we need to think about, because there's two things that could happen. Even now, with this co-sponsorship agreement that the city and the airport authority just approved last month, the way it appears is that in order to sell or lease the land, both the airport authority and the city would both have to consent to it. So, but we don't know if there's some document where the airport authority has legally given its rights to the city to do something on its behalf that we don't know as well, too. And the members of the airport authority should be worried about that. Is there a document where we've done that? What is going on? Are we going to be asked to sell or lease this? Because it certainly appears that's what conversations have you had on my behalf? And if you think that people won't hold you accountable,
Oh yeah,
you're wrong. You are really, really wrong. And that it still blows.
Yeah, I mean, if they move forward, if the city leases this, I mean, yeah, the people that are on the airport authority board are part of that whole process.
You don't get to say, "Oh, that the city took our authority." Well, you knew that could be a problem, and you can stop. You could get it now. You could say, "Hey, we need to stop that." But if you're not doing it,
right.
Airport authority is really, should really worry about their legacy in this city.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the city's, they're going to apparently do whatever they're going to do. But these airport authority members have if they want to leave a legacy in this city, this is a tough one. It's a real tough one.
Well, real quick, I'm seeing a conversation. Wendy Gilbert made a comment, and I think this was earlier, and I think somebody's jumping her case, I guess would be the way to say it, some about the IDA having the ability to protect information. This whole discussion that we've had about NDAs that's been going on. And Wendy, you are absolutely right in terms of there are times and places and legal situations that, yes, you can protect the plans and the particulars of all of that kind of stuff. But Wendy, what is going on here is that they are way over abusing that whole concept. And if I firmly believe that had you not jumped in and everybody got crazy back in November, I think they planned that they would bring it over to the city council, have all of it resolved with the FAA. I mean, looking at all the emails, and then they would have probably done an executive session, told them what was going on.
Well, that's what when you look at how
that's their
David
trend.
Hooks has gotten approval for for new industry before, that's what he did. He would come to a council meeting, asked to go into an executive session to discuss the new industry. They would come out. He would ask for them to immediately consider it at that meeting. The council would vote to do that, and then they would vote it in. So it would become public when it was first. I mean, the public had no opportunity to learn anything about it before it happened, and that's just not how government should work.
Right.
That
not with something like this.
Not with something like this. Now, absolutely, if there's trade secrets or preliminary things where you're competitive advantage, cities have to preserve that. I mean, and in order to recruit in an effective way, we're not suggesting that we hamstring our IDA and not allow us to be competitive to provide the confidentiality for preliminary type things, or that trade secrets should be revealed. There's a balance, right? There's a balance to what because it's in the best interest of the city not to do. The people don't want that either, because then industry won't come because the confidentiality of preliminary stuff wouldn't let them come. So it's not, but it's certainly not in the best interest of the people, of the public, that the government is able to recruit an industry and sell land and to give millions of dollars of tax abatements to a rendering plant with the public potentially not knowing anything about
Right.
that. That's the type of, and this is a real unusual case. And you know, Wendy, I hear, you know, when you've got a case that the balance is so off, you know, you end up with, we have such bad facts
Right.
that, you know, you don't want to create bad law that it swings the pendulum to
Right.
some type of open records that don't, you know,
Right.
provide that. So I don't suggest for any minute that we swing that so far, but when you have such bad facts like this, it's just hard to
Right.
to look at it any other way. But yes, if there was some reasonableness to it and an argument, but there's just no, I just don't see there's any sort of, with these fact patterns, it's just really egregious.
All right. We'll throw out another more general question from.
But let me interrupt.
Okay.
Those are fair things to ask.
Yeah.
I think that this, we need to make sure that this group is so, God, they're so good. They're so involved and so knowledgeable and so informed that sometimes people who maybe are new or haven't been involved so much, you know, I think that those, you know, it's fair that there are people that might not have a lot of background to ask those and tell them why we think that it's as egregious as it is.
So Jerry Cook asks, how does Christie feel about the results, good or bad?
Good. Oh, really good. Yeah, I feel really good. I mean, they denied every motion to quash. They are required to appear. They're required to submit their records to a court. The IDA still has to produce everything, even though they're not considered a public entity. They still have to produce it. So I believe that the result was a good one and a well thought through. I know that I can only imagine the time that the court and his staff are taking. I'm sure this case is absorbing just about all of his caseload. So I appreciate the time that they took with all this.
All right. Now here's a can of worms. Hal Murphy. Okay, Christie, I know you have to be careful. What's the real deal here? Who knows what? Who's paying whom, etc. Spill it if you can.
Well, I think those are questions that we're getting to the bottom of. We're getting the answers. As Michael said earlier, as the speculation becomes fact and we unpeel what we think to what we know, that's what we're going to come back and we're going to update everybody on. And so as we peel that back, but I don't want to get into what I speculate, even though I have those.
Right.
I feel like we're going to get facts that are going to get us to that point. And I think that I want to spend some time working on getting the backup that I think we're, now there may be some questions that we never find the full answers to. I hope that there aren't, but I believe we're going to have a lot more come out in the next several months. I do.
Well, as we're talking about months, how long can you keep this, keep it all in court until the next election cycle?
You know, the thing with injunctions is that, you know, there's limits. You know, it's up to a judge. It's up to what we can prove. I certainly think that we have the right in order to fully prove our case, and until the records are produced, this case should stay in court until we're able to get all of that in order to fully prove our case. But I think that there are multiple avenues that we are looking at in order to get this case so the next municipal elections can have a meaningful effect on stopping this. These next elections are going to be a really, really big deal, and we need to be preparing for them now.
So, a slight political commercial. If you're thinking about running, or you've ever thought about running, or you just dread the idea of running, but you know that you should, now's the time to go out there and do it. We need people to get involved in the political world around here, even if you don't like it. So, just throwing that out there. Commercial over.
Well, and this group in this county is so aware and educated about what this county needs and what the problems are in a way that I don't think I've ever seen since I've been here. So I think that not only are these elections going to be extremely meaningful as it relates to the rendering plant, I think they will be extremely meaningful about the vision of this county as it moves, because we've got to make a sea change. I mean, this is the moment. If there was a moment, this is the one. And I think being engaged in laying out to our candidates what our expectations are, so that those people, the right people, run who want to do those types of things.
All right. Are we going to get copies of the judge's comments and any of the other documents and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I can upload the order onto the opposition page. I sure can. Anything. I can do that. I'm trying to think. Y'all don't want the 26 pleadings that we have dealt with in the 11. I will. I mean, they're all on Alicourt.
I haven't been pressing her to put a whole lot on the internet because she's literally been working like 24/7 the last about
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks
with a short break, out of time
to get ready, and so. But yeah, I mean, what we can release and what we can put out there.
All of the court pleadings are public, and so those are. I can put as little or as much as you guys want. If it may be better if y'all sort of PM me too, and I can email them over. But it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well,
we were filing responses. We're getting stuff. I mean, when you got like 6 parties all filing objections, and then you got to get responses filed to each one. We were staying up till midnight.
I'm working on a way to make it a little easier for folks to find the different documents and all that kind of stuff and get that set up on the advancedetowah.com. So
there is some I might upload the response or the motion to quash of the city and the IDA, because those included affidavits from Frankie Davis and from David Hooks, and the non-disclosure agreement that they newly revealed. I haven't talked about that yet.
Oh, no.
Yes. So there was a part of their new defense that they brought up to the objections to try to quash the subpoenas is there is an NDA. For the first time, they released it as an NDA between Pilgrim's Pride and the IDA that was signed July 1st. So that's a date, July 1st, 2020. And so that indicates, the NDA is the first thing signed. Right. So indicates that's about when the first conversations between Pilgrim's Pride and the IDA about the airport would have started around that time. So they presented that for the first time, arguing that the non-disclosure, that because that the IDA shared the information with Frankie Davis at the city. So they argued that the protections of the non-disclosure should flow through to him as well. And Frankie said in his affidavit, and I need to post that so I can get the exact quote, that he says it was his job to evaluate the transaction and his decision to decide what the most favorable terms for the city were. And I don't know if he meant his to talk to the mayor or just really his. It was worded like Frankie was the decision maker. And so I'm interested to, figure out what he meant by that. But apparently the IDA shared that information with Frankie Davis at the city. They admit to that, and that shows that the Pilgrim's Pride released documents to the IDA, who then Frankie got. Okay. And then the IDA, in one of their arguments to quash the subpoena, was they didn't have time. So we go from nothing to see here back April 8th when they argued their other motions, to now their motion to quash the subpoena was there's thousands and thousands of pages that will take them weeks to compile, and they don't have time. Of course, the judge denied all of that, but that was one of the arguments that they made. So now we're talking about David Hooks and Frankie Davis in possession of thousands and thousands, that's the quote, of pages. So I'm anxious to see what thousands and thousands of pages exist and relating from July 1st on about bringing them here. So Frankie and Hooks seem to be the two that are the, which we knew. That's not a surprise.
Now we initially there was the argument that the city council members were also under NDA. I mean, has there been any more discovery on?
So Frankie in his affidavit said that he also disclosed some of the documents to other city employees. He didn't identify who those are, so I don't have any specifics on who Frankie revealed those records to.
Wouldn't that be would that be a violation of the NDA if
you should be a lawyer. That was my argument, that it was a violation of the judge ruled the NDA didn't apply because there was an exception in the NDA that for a court order, if you have a court order, then and so that was one of the exceptions. But I argued that exception, and I also argued the exception that it was an unauthorized disclosure. That how are you authorized to disclose it to someone outside of your entity, much less an employee? That was one of the arguments I made. But the fact that the NDA specifically excluded court orders, it's pretty clear. I don't know why you'd even. I scratched my head. Why would you even produce? The NDA clearly says, unless you're ordered by a court to produce it, then the NDA doesn't apply. Why are you arguing it? But that was the level of the argument to object. That is the extreme measures. All these parties, they do not want to come to court on Monday. Do not. That was so abundantly clear. So I'm excited we're going to court Monday.
All right. Well, guys, if y'all keep piling some questions in there, we're just shy of an hour. A little after 8. We'll keep going. I think there's probably Josh asked this a while ago, and I appreciate your patience. What is the situation on the sewer water stuff?
Josh, that is a phenomenal question, and I hate to say this, I have been so wrapped up in this preliminary injunction. I have been a horrible co-counsel with my water and air guys. I have apologized to them this past week, a couple of times, that I just do not have the bandwidth in order to kind of engage with some of the conference calls that they've had this week. But the air permit is on appeal, and they're working on a scheduling order on when the final hearing will, because they were issued the air permit, and then GASP has filed an appeal, and Advanced Etowah's intervened, so we're trying to work through the process of when the final hearing is going to be on that, and there's some issues there. The water guys are working on some matters, which I can't really talk about right now, but I will as soon as I can. And there's some conference calls that are going on next week to sort of get the clean water issues ramped up. But those are both very active, and those lawyers have been very active. I just haven't been as engaged with them as I should, and I've apologized to them a good bit this past 2 weeks. Mm-hmm.
Well, you've been busy on some pretty important stuff.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Philip Bryant asked, "Can we update? Can you update us on Monday?" So I think Monday is going to be a pretty busy.
I will do some type of. I'll do something. I'll do something written. I'll figure something out that will give you. I don't anticipate a ruling. Okay, it's really unusual for any judge to rule from the bench. People ask me that all the time because you watch TV shows and judges rule from the bench. That usually doesn't happen, and especially with the judge we have, who is meticulous and he is very clear. So. I don't expect to have a ruling on Monday, but I can certainly update about anything that happened. A lot of it will probably just be here's a couple things that happened, and here's when, if the judge does say when to expect a ruling, I'll give any high points.
And we can try and do another live probably later in the week.
Yeah. It's
But
probably better to wait because the order
yeah.
would probably when the order happens, which will be a couple days at least. I think that's probably a better time to update. We have the order in, and here's what's going on.
And we can probably assume the Gadsden Times will get their reporter in to at least try and capture what notes. I know Reba was doing her best to capture those notes. There was a lot. 11 attorneys arguing with each other. So
3 hours.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. And obviously we want to bring the information as quickly as we can. But we also have I can't do lives early next week. I got family stuff going on, and sorry guys, that's going to take priority. Let's see here. What does Christie want us to do to help?
So, right now we're in this sort of legal. I'm hoping that if we can get the injunction entered, then there's going to be more activity on the water side. And I think the community engagement we're going to need on the water side. And I think Justin and Coosa River Keepers, I think we're going to be able to shift to some of that. So I think that's going to be an important thing coming up. Just staying up to date and engaged is just huge. All the research everybody is putting on the page. Join an action group and just Reba and Steve and others going to these meetings and covering these. It is such a huge help to me. Like Reba, I was texting her today. There was an airport authority meeting, and I was just like, I am not going to make it to the airport. And I was like, Reba, where are you? She's like, I'm at the airport meeting, of course. And I was like, I love you, Reba. Thank you so much. And so, just help to cover some of these things. Like, join a group. I really think that start thinking about our leadership around here. I think that's something that's so important that you can do now. Watch these council meetings. There's $24 million in COVID money that they're about to get. $24 million. And rumor has it is that Mayor Guyton is saying, I'm going to spend every dime before I leave office. Now, that's just what I've been told. I didn't hear that myself. Demand to track that money. Where is this being spent?
Right.
Account for it. You got a tracker that you're putting up on Advanced Etowah.
Once that stuff comes in, then we'll start as we get the information. That's where you guys definitely paying attention, and we'll track that money. It's a pretty. I mean,
Guys,
that's a pretty considerable sum.
Game-changing money for our county, and we've got the group up at the city. We have in charge of that money. Somebody needs to they need some oversight. I mean, I mean that with all due respect, but those guys don't need $24 million without them knowing that we want to know where every dime of that money, that is game-changing money we desperately need for our city. And I don't feel like we have the leadership and the vision up there to appropriately handle that and we've got to watch that. That's an opportunity we can't just let go away. So getting engaged on those issues and any other issues like where's our master plan? What start to talk about those. I think that's something that you can do now and is meaningful, very meaningful right now.
Yeah, I mean,
can you imagine if we had a master plan and $24 million to do something with? I'm sure there's limits to what the COVID money can be spent on.
Right.
I don't know what those are, but imagine if we had the leadership up there that we needed and we had a master plan and $24 million. Imagine in 5 years where we would be, so let's try not to lose this opportunity and talk to our leaders.
All right. Well, and that's to somebody's comment earlier about keep us informed, keep everybody informed. let everybody know as we find out stuff, and that's the intention. That's our plan at Advanced Etowah, and our group, and those of you that are willing to help us. That is our intention to track stuff like that and make sure that everybody's at least aware. Even the stuff that we can't stop from happening, at least we'll know who's involved and what's going on. So
and demand, where's your plan?
yeah,
But I mean, there's got to be a plan. Don't tell me there's no plan and you're just going to spend. There's got to be a plan. If there's not, there should be.
yeah. Let's see here. Here's a good one on near and dear to my heart. There's a section on wildlife in and around airports on the FAA website. How can they even consider granting a permit for this?
Do you want to take that one?
I'm gonna throw this out here, guys, and I've been saying this all along. The FAA's job is not to come in and dictate zoning rules and all that kind of stuff. What they would approve or disapprove, and when you read about BASH, Bird Airstrike Hazard, the wildlife attractants, I posted up a study from 2019 about all the bird strikes and all that kind of stuff dating back about 20, 30 years. Um, they're all in the form of what they call an advisory circular or their recommended guidance. Even airport development, like around the airport, there's no law or regulation that I'm aware of. Again, I'm not an aviation legal expert. I've dealt with some of that from my military background, but they won't come and stop that because they've provided a lot of guidance on, hey, you shouldn't build a wildlife attractant within 5 miles. That was in one of the recommendations of the report. I believe the actual advisory circular says within 10,000 feet, you need to avoid bird animal attractants. Obviously, birds is the big threat to airplanes. Although if fish have hit airplanes before, but there's craziness out there. I can go down a rabbit hole, but that's why this whole idea that the FAA is going to come in and save us, and I'm not going to hold it against the FAA. Their job is not to look at us and go, well, that's a really dumb thing to do with your airport. They're just saying, well, here's our recommendation based on data. It will be up to the users of the airport, the people that fly in here, or the lack of potential of what could happen at the airport because users won't want to come because you're going to have a giant bird attractant. And I saw Reba made a follow-up comment on that, that said that she asked in the airport authority meeting today about wildlife and the rendering plant bringing more to the airport. And whoever he is, Reba, if you want to tell us, he claimed the rendering plant would be self-enclosed fenced.
Wow. So that's going to keep in birds.
Yeah. So, I spent 3 years working with a USDA biologist. So like I said, I've got a little bit of background with this. So a huge fence, I think if I remember correctly, 8-foot-ish or more with a barbed wire fence. If you get deer that get in, you can exterminate the deer. That's good for keeping ground-based wildlife, off. I'm not really bird attractant stuff. That gets into figuring out how to, very specific procedures on Navy bases on discarding that dead carcass. You go kill a deer. Well, now you got to do something with it. Very specific on how you build a hole or dig a hole, put lye in there, and try to mitigate the attractant of large vultures. Well, this is a rendering plant that deals in processing rotting meat. We've seen for 6 months now, at least once a week, I'm seeing pictures that people are posting of the giant birds attracted. So I'd be very interested in knowing who is suggesting. Even if they're a closed container, we know there's spills. There's just so many things. There's a giant water feature that's part of this. Well, that's a bird attractant. That's just. I made a post earlier this week. I cannot think of anyone involved in aviation that would go, yeah, that's. I don't think I can think of a worse thing to actually build on an airport. I'd rather have a 100-foot or 100-story skyscraper built right there at least I can deal with that, and I can figure out how to fly around.
Yeah, because it doesn't move.
Right.
And Reba, I wonder who told you that, because how do you know it's going to be self-enclosed by a fence? I have no flipping records from the airport authority. They act like they've never seen this thing, much less a drawing of it, much less they've never been approached. They know nothing about nothing. Now you've got whoever that is, saying, oh, don't worry, we know there's going to be a self-enclosed fence around it, so it's going to be. How do you know that? Where's the record? Why don't I have it? That kind of thing makes me just want to just absolutely lose my mind. And so, why do you know that information? Why have you not shared it? And anyway, that's just, don't get me on my open records.
Yeah. So, again, I mean, this all goes back from the very beginning. This can be fixed at the local level. We don't need to depend on the federal level, the FAA. It's
and it's to those people who can stop this. I've said it before. It's not trying to say anything other than reality. This is just going to get worse the longer it goes on. It's not going away. We're not buying it. You're not going to convince us. You're not going to escape. You're not going to be able to not have responsibility tied onto you. If this thing comes, the leaders who let it come are responsible, because they could have stopped it multiple times before it came, and they chose not to, either because they wanted it or they didn't have the wherewithal or courage to stop it. And it's only going to get worse if you don't do that. And it's better to do it now than to do it, 6 months from now, 1 month from now, or to let it come. If you think that this is all going to go away and die down, that's just not going to happen. So let's decide this, like Jason Wilson said at council. Just take it on the chin and move on to something else. And let's find something that we can all agree on, that we do have a vision for here.
Yeah. Well, and let's not forget how much taxpayer dollars are getting spent on this whole thing. Now they're going to turn around and blame us. They're going to blame the Chadwicks for paying you to come and do this and waste all their time and money. But, I mean, come on. Again, are we seeing, really? I'd say at this point, if you're tone deaf to not see there's a sizable portion of this county that don't want this, yeah, you're still spending all the money and the time and resources. 8 lawyers. A number of them paid by
these are
the city of Gadsden.
These are your tax dollars. And so to fight you, whether it's a lobbyist, which we saw before, and that by continuing the fight and not just moving on, it's your resources being used against you, and that's what makes this such an unusual. When I've said it before, it's one thing when it's two private parties fussing with each other. It's your government fighting you, and if that doesn't alarm everybody, which it does, I understand that it does, but that's why everybody is so alarmed, because it's our government that is fighting us to do something that's against the people's will, and it doesn't have to be that way.
All right. I know we could go on and on. I'm going to jump through here. I see one other. Can those of us who live near the site sue if our home values drop?
So I get asked that question a whole lot. Yes, that's a nuisance case. That is the private nuisance case that if we get past the zoning case, and if they start to get a building permit and a license, that's when those private nuisance cases where adjacent landowners or close by landowners would, either do a class or do a group of people and go back into court. But that's something later. If we're at that stage, our leaders have failed us. Okay. If we're having to resort to that, our leaders have continued to fail.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, that's basically one of the arguments that Lee Roberts put forth, was that we should just wait and then deal with it.
That's right. That's right. And that's not acceptable. It's unacceptable. And the fact it was said in open court should bother people.
Yes. Yeah. So we keep hearing that we need to just be quiet and let the politicians take care of it, let the professionals take care of it. No, I mean, I guess I would say that we have been quiet, and to our detriment. I mean, to a lot of us that have not invested and paid attention, that this is where we get ourselves. And so to suggest that, like, we just need to chill out and let the process happen, well, we've kind of been doing that for the last couple of decades, and look at where we are. The numbers are the numbers. So, we need to stay engaged. Back to, what can you do? Get engaged. If you've ever thought about running for office, I'm telling you, right now is the time. Ever in your life you thought, you know what, I could do some good on the city council, or you know what, I want to run.
Support somebody who get involved in a campaign, like be a support person. Encourage others. If you don't want to run, encourage those who do.
That friend that you're thinking of right now that is like, oh, dude, he needs to be he needs to go be in office. And I'm not saying go become a politician, because that's really not what we're doing right now. We just need people that are willing to jump in and fix. And I still believe, and I may catch some hate for this, I think there's still elected officials in our county right now that still want to do that. I think they are hamstrung. I think some of them have been sold a bad bill of goods, or made assumptions on who they should listen and who they should trust. And I hope that everybody is going, I'm going to question all the assumptions I've had, whether it's a guy like me that's only been around here for about 10 years or people that have been around here for 62 years. You got to question the assumptions. But yeah, encourage people, support people, whatever you can do. But if that does not happen, what are we, 12 months out?
August 2022.
August 2022.
Is the municipal, and then general's November 2022.
If change doesn't come, then this is all for naught.
Yeah.
We'll just keep on being what we are as Etowah County. And so take that for what it's worth, guys. I'm sure there's probably some great comments and some great questions, but we're going to get out of here. I know it's been a fairly
busy week,
very lengthy week. Thank you for your time, Christie, as always.
Just the engagement. Michael, thank you for your time. You're away from your family and home and job, and just everybody that stays so engaged with this. And I say this every time I talk to you guys. It is you. It is you being engaged and you caring about this that's going to win the day here. I'm just a mouthpiece for that. And thank you for caring and for loving your home and your neighbor and wanting it to be a better place and be willing to fight for that. And thank you to the Chadwick family and to Advance Etowah and everybody that's in this fight with me. Everybody can get tired and it's a long fight, but we are going to persevere. And thank you for being in the fight with me.
All right, guys. Well, thank y'all for spending some time with us on a Friday night. Go hug your kids, go play outside, catch some fireflies, it's summer's here. Kids are out of school. We're doing graduations. We've got a big ugly cloud hanging over our county right now. But man, this is a beautiful place, and this is one of those times of year where you got to be thankful for where you live. So, guys, y'all have a good night. We will see you on the internet, and we'll try and get you updates and information as best we can over the next few days. But do be patient. she's got to actually get in court, and there's a lot of prep work. You should see the boxes of paperwork.